What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phaithful Phanatics show. As always, I am one half of your host here, Dylan Davis. You can find me on Twitter at DylanJD98, and my faithful co-host, of course, to my right, Matt McGinty. You can give him a follow on Twitter as well, at Matt_McGinty. And today we are brought to you with a very, very special guest, Mr. Marc Farzetta of the Farzy Show. Guys, you can find him on Twitter if you haven't already, at Marc Farzetta. Marc, what's going on, my man?
I really appreciate the second very and the very, very special guest because some guys are schlubs. They just come in here with a very special guest. You got a very, very special guest. So I appreciate that. And yeah, how original is that? At Marc Farzetta. Don't forget it's with a C, folks. It's with a C, just to confuse the hell out of people. No, thanks for having me on. You guys do a great job. I'm excited to be on. I appreciate you guys reaching out.
No problem, man. So first and foremost, this show, we're just going to spend a little bit of time talking about what's been going on in Philly sports. Obviously, the Eagles are knocked out of playoffs with one try. Joel Embiid's been dominant as of late, well, really of the last month and a half. Ben Simmons, trade packages. Daryl Morey had an interview today that we'll get into. So we'll just have some fun with it. But first, I'll start with the Eagles here, Marc. What was your disappointment level following this playoff loss? Were you okay with it because they've already had a successful year and they overachieved? Or did you see some glaring issues moving forward in that loss?
Oh, I certainly saw glaring issues, but just as far as the disappointment, to answer your question, it was awful. I didn't expect them to win, but I also expected them to show up at least, and they didn't do that. Exactly. I don't know where you guys were in terms of your state of mind going into that game. I didn't expect them to win, but I didn't expect them to just play so terribly. And look, I actually give Nick Sirianni credit for the first quarter. The run game was the best version of themselves. They stuck with it for a good amount of that first quarter. But the minute you saw 8 guys stacked in the box consistently, the minute you saw in your first 3rd and 2 situation, you run a read option, they have that blanketed and you can't go anywhere with it, maybe adjust a little bit. And also, you got 8 men in the box. Why are you consistently just throwing to the sidelines? Try to stretch the field a little bit. Get a guy open downfield. See if Jalen Hurts can hit somebody downfield. I know that the MO for Jalen Hurts is he doesn't have a strong enough arm. I don't think that's true. I think he doesn't have an accurate enough arm, and that to me is the bigger issue. They won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, who had a rag arm as a quarterback, but knew how to loft that ball with a lot of air under it down the field accurately. They could do that with Jalen Hurts, and I thought they should have tried that earlier in the game. Defense got picked apart. Nick Sirianni, when it came to not taking the ball first, I thought was ridiculous. Why would you say to Jonathan Gannon, hey, you're really good at your job. Why don't we have you try to stop Tom Brady to start this game off? That seems like a dumb idea. So to defer the coin toss, give the ball to Tom Brady, let them set the tone with that, 10-play drive that took up 5 minutes, I thought was bonkers. It was very disappointing. And people asked me about it before the game. You know, the classic question, and you used the word right there, over or underachieve. Everything changes. It changes game by game. And yes, for the regular season, they overachieved. They did a great job of overachieving, over 500 record, making the playoffs, 7th seed, all that. They may have found a quarterback for at least next year with Jalen Hurts, which is good. But when you look at it from the bird's eye view, no pun intended, your expectations change as you watch each game play in and play out. And I was greatly disappointed with the way they played that game against Tampa Bay. And I thought the adjustments took way too long to actually happen for you to have somewhat of a puncher's chance coming out of that game. So still very disappointed in the way the season actually ended. Although I knew they were going to lose, I didn't expect them to lose in that fashion.
So let me ask you about the 2 biggest question marks coming this season, which was obviously the head coach and the quarterback being the 2 probably most important things on each football team. So who were you more impressed with prior to this playoff game, Nick Sirianni or Jalen Hurts? And then a second part that was, who are you less impressed with on Sunday between the 2 of them?
I was less impressed with Jalen Hurts. I was most impressed with Nick Sirianni throughout the year because I know every coach likes to say, because they know it's how everyone describes a good head coach. Oh, you don't coach to your scheme, you coach to what you have, right? That's what I want to be a great coach. So that's what I'm going to say to the media. And people think, well, at least he's got the right mindset. Nick Sirianni actually did it. And ironically, like this game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoffs, much like the season, he waited too long to make adjustments. If you're not going, people forget because it was week 3 and because the Cowboys ran away with the division and the Eagles fell out of it so early and then rallied at the end of the season to make the playoffs. People forget their first game against the Cowboys. They ran the ball with a running back twice or 3 times in total, an entire game. That is Like, even Andy Reid looks at that going, I think you should run the ball a little bit. Like, that's ridiculous to me. So Nick Sirianni actually making the adjustments, albeit slower than I would have liked. Still rookie head coach, did what he needed to do to put his team in the best possible position to win games. And they identified as a run-first team as the season went on, which is what they did. They said, let's get behind our awesome offensive line head coach, or offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland, and just run right behind him and see where it goes. Well, it went to the playoffs. When it came to the final game of the season, and really when it came to the last 4 games of the regular season with Jalen Hurts as your starting quarterback, so that excludes the Jets, they averaged 3 points. I'm sorry. They averaged 5 points in the first half in those final 4 games of the season. They scored a total of 3 points in the first quarter of those last 4 games of the season. That's on Jalen Hurts. That's on Nick Sirianni. It's on Jalen Hurts for not being able to get his team going, especially in that Giants game that I know we've all talked about ad nauseum already. And it's on Nick Sirianni for not trying to be aggressive early in these games. If you see the little dink and dunk things aren't working, do something else. Try a big play down the field to try to get something going. They never did that. And then the last game of the season against the Cowboys, I was all on board for having your starters play. I would have loved to see him a quarter. I would have bargained for a couple series. I would have treated it actually kind of how you treated it, which was a preseason game, but it was a preseason game for your backups. I would have treated it like preseason game number 2 as opposed to the modern day preseason number 3 where none of your starters play.
Right.
But I would have loved to see him try to establish that. And then Jalen Hurts was just god-awful in that game. I'm a Jalen Hurts fan. Yeah. I think he's well-deserving of the second year here to be a starting quarterback. I don't like any quarterback in this draft. I don't think any trade or free agent signing for a quarterback is actually going to happen. So I am more than okay with heading into next season with Jalen Hurts as a starting quarterback. He disappointed me greatly. Both those things can be true. You can be a Jalen Hurts fan thinking you're in the next year, but you can look at that game and try to be objective, and that game was terrible. Inaccurate, late throws, late read in the field. He was not a good quarterback in that game. I'm not basing everything on that game, but that's still a big game for his resume, and he failed in that game.
So follow up real quick, because I do want to get to your boy QB1 in a second. But Nick Sirianni, we talked about, you just mentioned him adjusting it, and we're talking about game plan, in-game adjustments. What do you think about the head coach as far as the leader, as far as the locker room guy? Because, man, you hear the PR stuff. You hear his interviews, his press conferences, and we all know how that started out. And then you hear the flower speech and the roots. But, like, do you think these dudes actually bought into it? Because they're after a win late in the season, Jason Kelsey's walking down the tunnel talking about watering, their roots and stuff. What do you think about Nick Sirianni, translating to that locker room and being a leader for this team? Yeah,
roots on 3, baby. Yeah, breaking it down in the locker room with that. When I heard it, okay, let me just go through the progression so people get the full context here. They hired Nick Sirianni, who does that press conference. Train wreck. That was a train wreck of a press conference. That was horrible. Like I'm like, that's the guy who's going to be making decisions in the goal line situations. That's the guy who's going to be making decisions in the red zone. That's the guy who's going to be trying to command a locker room. All right, prove me wrong, but it doesn't look good. I didn't quit on him. I didn't say this was stupid, but it was a hard sell after that introductory press conference. But one thing you always have to keep in mind with that, a press conference, a podium, a microphone is not a head coach's natural habitat. Sure. Okay, it is the sideline, so it is a locker room, so maybe he's a little bit more comfortable there. The rock, paper, scissors. I thought that was creative. I thought that was making adjustments. He needed to find a way to see if guys are still competitive. In a virtual world, how else was he going to do that? So I love the idea that he played rock, paper, scissors with like Landon Dickerson and other draft prospects. When he couldn't be together with guys like he was with Gardner Minshew all those years ago, he played him one-on-one or played him a game of horse. He said, I can't do that, so I'm going to play rock, paper, scissors. I thought that was great. That was creative. The flower speech, I put my money in the table and I just said, I'm out. This guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. If you're going to talk about growing strong roots, talk about an oak tree. You know what I mean? Talk about something that's like, rah, strong as oak, right? We got flowers. We got flower pots. We got fertilizer. It's insane. But here's the thing. The speech wasn't for me. The speech wasn't for you. The speech wasn't for the fans. The speech was for the locker room. And he read that locker room as a non-former player head coach. Like Doug Peterson, everyone talked about how great he was. He was a former player, could read a locker room. He was great in that regard, great leader because of it. Nick Sirianni's not. But what he did do was use his youth, only 40 years old as a head coach, only a couple of years older than some of these guys that are getting ready to retire on the Eagles team, and actually use that to his advantage, that he could identify with the younger guys on this roster because he himself was a young head coach. Whatever it was, flowers, roots, the locker room got it. Media, fans, not so much. but the locker room got it. And I think that takes something special within a head coach to realize what his locker room will respond to. And as a non-player, I'm blown away at how he became such a leader, as again, a non-former NFL player, such a leader in that locker room and rallied this team to actually win in the second half of the season, albeit against a bad schedule. The Eagles could have proved that they were just as bad as any other team. Instead, they didn't. They beat bad teams. As a good football team, they beat bad teams. Great football team is still a far cry from this team as of right now.
All right, let's move on to QB1 and Jalen Hurts, because I feel like there's a ton to discuss with this. All right, so one thing in my mind that I didn't even visualize happening before 1 o'clock on Sunday, one thing that I didn't think would ever happen, but one thing that couldn't happen was that Jalen Hurts played so badly enough to bring up the conversation of him being here in 2022. He had already locked that up before the game, and then he played poorly enough for the whispers to start to come back out, for the Eagles to be crazy not to even look at other options this offseason for 2022. I think I know where this is going, but where do you stand with your evaluation of Jalen Hurts? I know you're a Jalen Hurts guy, but my issue with him is the deficiencies as a passer. I know everyone keeps saying, well, he can get better. He's 23 years old. He's played in 22, 23 games. These are the same issues that he's had throughout his college career as well, that were assessed pre-NFL, that haven't gotten better in 3 or 4 or 5 years, however long it's been. That's my concern. So where do you stand on your evaluation of Hurts? Do you see him at all being a long-term, answer for this team?
As of right now, no, I do not. But that's why I would like 2022 to further evaluate that. And let me just say this about the college stuff. I'm not a college football guy. I watch college football, but I'm not like huge into it. I know we went to Alabama, and Alabama is basically like the farm system for the NFL and Auburn and all those schools. But like, I never heard it brought up this much ever with, well, when you were at Alabama, and that's basically the NFL. And that's how it's brought up in that vein. And I'm like, no, it's still college. There's still children playing on that offensive, defensive line. But what I'm saying is, when I look at Jalen Hurts, I think this is the opportunity he needs to have that full year as a starting quarterback like he had just now. Get the offseason, get the reps in the offseason, and come into next year with maybe surrounded with more talent. Because in one breath, you can't be bitching and moaning about how terrible Jalen Reagor is and then be like, well, why won't Jalen Hurts find somebody? Right. It's like, well, because that guy sucks too. You know what I mean? But I have more of an upside with Jalen Hurts. The reason I have more of an upside with Jalen Hurts is because of a very simple thing. I find it very hard to bet against a guy that has already some talent, like talent enough to at least be drafted in the second round of an NFL draft. That's pretty good. And then also have a killer work ethic. I also think a lot of the off-the-field stuff never got to him. And I think in the NFL, as we've learned with a guy like Carson Wentz, that off-the-field stuff can really affect a locker room. And that's why the Eagles all of a sudden decided to take the biggest cap hit in the history of the NFL just to get that guy out of their locker room. So I don't think that problem is lying there waiting in the wings for a guy like Jalen Hurts. With that being said, the overall improvement, I think with a guy like this that is already this talented, that is already has this much of a work ethic, I think he will improve in year 2022. I think he'll improve as the Eagles starting quarterback. I saw enough flashes throughout this season, the way he played against the Broncos, the way he played a lot in the second half of these games down the stretch. That led me to believe that this is a guy that can lead this team into the playoffs again next year as an overall better football team. Now, if you're telling me you can possibly hold on to a first-round pick or 2 first-round picks and still get Russell Wilson, still get Aaron Rodgers, hey, man, let's party. If you're telling me Deshaun Watson, all this isn't real and he's going to be playing the week 1 next year, let's entertain that. Let's have a conversation. But as of right now, I don't see any of those things happening. I don't look at this draft and say, oh, this guy's definitely better than Jalen Hurts. Let's move 2 of our first-round picks to move up to make sure we get Kenny Pickett or Willis or Carroll or whoever it is. Let's see if we get those guys up here. I'm not there. I'm still looking at Jalen Hurts saying, let's stick with him for at least next year.
So real quick, if they're not bringing in one of the veteran QBs that's on the market and they're not going to make a move to move up for anyone in this draft, and you're giving Hurts 2022, which I think is going to happen, by the way, are you moving any of these 3 first-round draft picks to 2023 as an insurance policy on if he doesn't turn out to be a guy?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Howie does. I've said as much. I think that is exactly how Howie plays it. I think that he does not take 3 first-round picks in this draft. I mean, the money that's attached to that, we all know. I think he definitely uses one of those as insurance for next year. I wouldn't be shocked if he actually packaged some of his later picks with a first-round pick to get more picks later, maybe even this year or next year. But here's one thing I'll guarantee you. The Eagles are not going to walk away from that late April NFL draft with 3 different players after day one. That's what I can all but guarantee you. But I will say, I don't think they're going to look to the draft for a quarterback of the future. They may take a quarterback in the mid rounds to take a flyer on somebody just so they have somebody. And that'll still aid a lot of conversation about whether or not Jalen Hurts is the guy. So this conversation didn't go anywhere. But that's where I think the Eagles' mindset is to make sure they do have an insurance policy if Jalen Hurts is not that guy and they end up taking somebody 2 years from now.
So a question I have for you is the wide receiver room, because that thing is a dumpster fire. Do you see them investing a first-round pick again in a wide receiver? Do you see them getting free agents? Is Jalen Reagor going to be wide receiver 2 again next year? What do you see happening in 2022?
Well, I think Quez Watkins has elevated himself to wide receiver number 2. And look, I like Quez Watkins, but I think he's a number 3. Yeah, exactly. He's not a number 2 guy. Devontae Smith, I think, is a legit number 1. It might help if your coach schemes some plays for him. How many times I had to hear Nick Sirianni talk after games this year of, well, they
putting guys in better position.
Well, not even that. Along those lines, but not that. Oh, well, they took that away from us. I'm like, oh, it was that easy to out chess match you?
Dude,
are you serious?
Aikman was begging on the broadcast to get this dude involved, and it was just nah.
Well, they took that away. Oh, is coaching hard? Tell me more. Like, I just couldn't believe that from Nick Sirianni. That was one of the things that I know a lot of people talked about, what I already mentioned, the rock, paper, scissors, the flowers, all that stuff. The amount of times he said, well, they took that away. Did the defensive coordinator do his job, Nick? Was that a surprise? Like, that just drove me bonkers throughout the season. Anyway, I digress. I do think they need to make major changes. I don't think they draft a wide receiver in the first round. I think they sign a wide receiver. I know you got Allen Robinson out there in free agency. You can possibly get him. I know Devontae Adams is like the fish or wish scenario. But I'm like, go get Devontae Adams and then get Aaron Rodgers. Like, let's just basically become the Philadelphia Packers. I'd be all for that. But I don't think they go draft for a wide receiver. I think that they add a wide receiver via free agency or even via trade. But I think that's the route they go to try to fix that problem, because I think Howie Roseman got 1 in a row right with Devontae Smith. I don't think he's going to push his luck to try to go for 3 or 4 if you include JJ Arcega-Whiteside. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now with all that.
You just had me thinking. Before you said JJ, I'm like, what was the worst pick? Obviously, I think we can all agree it was number 20 on Jalen Reagor. But still, look, man, we've taken up enough time on the Eagles, and I do want to get in a few Sixers questions before we move on. But
by all means.
Another Mark with a C says, can you explain to us why Gannon is a popular candidate for a head coaching position when he was near the bottom in third down D, red zone D, turnovers and sacks? And shout out to Paul Hembekides, because he put out a stat earlier saying that the Eagles, they weren't first. I forget the rank that they were in defensive line win rate, meaning off the line of scrimmage, but they were dead last in sacks this year, meaning his soft as baby shit defensive scheme did not work. So what do you think teams are looking at in Jonathan Gannon? It's like his 3rd interview.
Well, first off, let me just say this. Mark Moscatelli, I believe was his last name. For the people, and we talked about this a second ago, there's no K in the Italian alphabet, which is why a lot of the Italians marks have a C instead of a K. Fun fact. Anyway, as far as Jonathan Gannon, I got no idea. And I had Seth Joyner on my show the other day, and Seth used the phrase head scratching. And we all know, Seth, when you're an Eagles Hall of Famer and you played for a guy like Buddy Ryan, all right, you're going to have a high expectation for what a defense does. It's head scratching to him as to how he's getting head coaching coordinator or head coaching jobs after 1 year as a DC. And the only thing that I land on is, and this isn't as much as a reason as it is an explanation. And I don't know why this is the case, but I remember Joe Banner recently doing an interview, I think it was with Inquirer, about how Jonathan Gannon was this great piece to add to your coaching staff as a defensive coordinator. He's a brilliant guy, young and up-and-coming defensive coordinator, brilliant defensive mind. People need to get this guy as a defensive coordinator as soon as humanly possible. Highly sought after. The Eagles get him. Whoop-de-doo. And then one of the worst defenses you've ever seen. not aggressive, not forcing turnovers, not even using guys in the defensive line like Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, who had got off to a great start and then crashed and burned as the season went on. You obviously lost Brandon Graham. Josh Sweat showed some flashes here and there, and then Darius Slay was Darius Slay. That was the one guy that was just solid for you throughout the entire year.
The calculators will tell you he's an overrated cornerback. But.
Yeah, that's adorable. That's why I don't listen to nerds. Anyway, so no, but in all seriousness, when it comes down to it again, I can't give you reasoning behind it. I can only tell you that for whatever reason, whether it's becoming a defensive coordinator, which he did, he became a defensive coordinator with the Eagles, or it's becoming a head coach, like now he's got 3 interviews all of a sudden. This guy is looked at for some reason as a chosen one. I don't know if he's got the proverbial pictures of people with goats or whatever the hell. I don't know what to explain. I don't know how to tell you. But for whatever reason, in NFL circles, this guy is looked at as something special. And until he proves otherwise as a head coach, I think he's already done that as a defensive coordinator. But until he does that as a head coach, I think he's just going to be looked at as, for whatever reason, this golden boy, anointed one that just needs to get to the top of the coaching chain as soon as possible.
Which doesn't make sense because the dude's got one of the most punchable faces you'll ever see on the NFL sideline.
He punchable face.
The glasses, dude. Come the glasses, the little. Come on, man.
Well, see, here's the difference between you and me. I won't hit a man with glasses. But anyway, no, I look at what he's done with this defense, and I look at I'll say something nice about Jonathan again. Here's one thing I'll honestly say.
Oh boy,
I know the fact that Fletcher Cox said what he said to the media after the Raiders loss. I'm not talking to the defensive coordinator. That's not my job, And he went through that whole thing. It's not my job to stop the run. It's my job to get to the quarterback, whatever. And I can't do that in the scheme. And then he echoed those same words in his press conference during the week. Apparently, him and Jonathan Gannon had a conversation, and Fletcher Cox doesn't want to leave Philadelphia. So he's still one of the best players on this defense. I would just like to see Jonathan Gannon use him in a better way to make sure you're getting the absolute most out of him.
Not in pass protection?
Not in pass protection would be good. I don't need to see Fletcher Cox playing a corner. You know what I'm saying? It's just ridiculous to me. But whatever was said, it kept the peace. So I give him credit for that. But that's cute and adorable. I'd rather just have a better defensive coordinator overall.
All right, man. Let's get into some Sixers talk before we wrap up here.
Sure.
I don't want to take too much of your time tonight. Daryl Morey had an interview today.
Yes.
So I don't know if you got a chance to listen to it. But
I did.
Anything stick out to you in particular? And then what about specifically his comments about the Sixers expanding their player pool because of how dominant Embiid has been? I don't know about you. That rubbed me the wrong way.
Well,
because
yeah. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just because, I understand how dominant Joel Embiid is, but that shouldn't change your mind. Obviously, you're not bringing in a top 15 player for Ben Simmons. We know that. But, to go from 15 to 20 to 40, that, is number 39 going to help you win an NBA championship next to Joel Embiid? No, I still think the mark should be a talent that can help them win a chip.
Certainly. And as much as I'd love to say the name that we've all talked about, Dame Lillard, it ain't happening. I'd love for it to happen. It ain't happening. But I think what Daryl Morey's overall point was, and don't get me wrong, I hated it. The idea of, you know what, maybe top 25. All right, forget top 25. Maybe 30. Oh, 30, not getting 30. Maybe 40. So let's check back in a month when we're at the top 100 players in the NBA, and let's see if we can get number 98 to play with Joel Embiid. That's kind of, I think, the reality that's settling in right now with Daryl Morey. I think he is still hell-bent on getting a good return for Ben Simmons. I think he is settling for a good return for Ben Simmons, but I think he also knows he is not going to get a great return for Ben Simmons. So as much as I would love to say that he's going to get Dame Lillard and whoever, it's not happening. And I think that's setting in for him. So I think when the question was posed about possibly Harrison Barnes, Buddy Hield, Tyrese Halliburton, a couple of first-round picks, I think that's kind of more the idea of what Daryl Morey will get back. Now, his overall point, not to justify, but to explain, I think was Joel Embiid is playing so great that we might not need that legit all-star player here in Philadelphia right now. And to a degree, I get that because, but the thing that makes me dispel that right away is the fact that I knew how good Joel Embiid was. I didn't.
Right.
It's not breaking news. Yeah.
But real quick, not to mention, we shouldn't be needing. I know we only played 27 minutes last night, but previous games, Guinness said it all the time on our show. We shouldn't need Embiid to drop 38 and 15 against the Charlotte Hornets in December to win a game in overtime. You get the supporting cast is that bad right now to me.
Yeah, I think he is setting us up right now to not get ready for disappointment, because I think most Sixers fans right now are settling on the idea that, it's not going to be Dame Lillard, right? You're not getting that guy. But it's going to be somebody that can help this team, that will definitely improve this team and then possibly make this team better down the line. And one of the best points I thought he made was, if you're telling me that we're going to get some players that can play right now and we're unloading possibly contracts,
who's not playing yet,
Tobias Harris, and a guy who's not playing in Ben Simmons, if you're unloading that right now for a chance to bring in maybe next year or the year after another Tyrese Maxey who at least could be a solid scorer for you off the bench, then that's pretty good trade. And you're still bringing in a guy that can shoot from the outside like Buddy Hield, and that's a throw in for contract purposes. I get he's not even close to the marquee name here, but Tyrese Halliburton, Harrison Barnes, and those picks, then your team is still getting better. You're alleviating cap from yourself. You're already adding, because you don't have anything in Ben Simmons right now, and you're moving that contract on. And you're possibly moving a couple of first-round picks, which you can either draft players or package to get that later elite player from another franchise that might be looking to unload one down the line.
That's what I was actually going to ask you. The Ben and Tobias package deal. That deal, do you see that more as a way to get another star, another Dame Lillard, or is it like a ploy for, let's say, James Harden in the summer? That's the name that keeps coming up.
Yeah, I think that's more along the lines of that, simply because of the money. I mean, it's just so much money that you're freeing up by being able to make that move. It's ridiculous. And I think there's only a couple of teams that could take that. The Kings would be one of them. So I think really what it would do is free up that money for you to be able to go out there and get one of the bigger names like a James Harden to play, who I still think with Joel Embiid, I think would be an amazing 1-2 punch. And then if you're able to keep Tyrese Maxey on this team at the same time, he continues to improve. I think you're looking at a pretty high-powered offensive. When you're looking at Tyrese Maxey's slashing ability to get to the rim, and he's got to do that more often, and I hope that's something that grows with him. James Harden's ability to shoot from the outside, the versatility of Joel Embiid, and his defense, that is something that I think will be something that could become a big three. It's already a big two, even at the age that James Harden is right now, 32. That's something that would at least be a big two in the NBA, with maybe a growing third in that.
So what are your thoughts on who else you would throw in to move the needle for a superstar type piece? Because we have this conversation weekly over here about who's untouchable, can't stand the word. But this fan base, our fan base, falls in love with guys that aren't quite deserving. They're just a great guy. Matisse Thybulle is what I'm trying to get to the point.
Oh, yeah.
What in what packages are you willing to throw Matisse in? Because I know it was Ben, Toby, and Matisse that was mentioned in the Kings one. I don't know if I'm doing that, but at the same time, Matisse can go for anything that moves the needle for me.
I'm doing that deal, and I love Matisse. I love Matisse Thybulle. The way I put it on the show, to get rid of the word untouchable, because I'm like you, I hate that word. Daryl Morey has a blank check right now with this roster. The only person I'm moving aside is Joel Embiid. That's it. Everybody else, sign on the dotted line. You're whoever it is you want to trade away. You have a blank check as long as it's not Joel Embiid. So that's the way I like to get away from the untouchable thing. I love Tyrese Maxey. I love Matisse Thybulle. You can get a Matisse Thybulle in the late rounds of the draft, a solid defensive player, a guy with a chip on his shoulder, work ethic, and all that. Because one of the things I've learned about having Ben Simmons in Philadelphia is, and I forget who it was, if it was Bradley Beal or whoever it was that came out and said, to be even one of the best defenders, even a top 10 or even 20 defender in the NBA, you have to just be willing to defend. That's how much everyone hates playing defense. All right. And that sucks, because we all, you guys are getting paid millions of dollars to play a sport. You should play both ends and all thing. But unfortunately, the reality is you have to be a willing participant to be a good defensive player. And you could get a lot of those guys in the later, either in the second round or later in the first round, like you got Matisse Thybulle. Now, he's a special player. He'll probably be better still than anything you would bring back in a draft or a trade as far as defensive capabilities go. But his three-point shot hasn't improved to the point of, but look, his three-point shot's so great. Yeah, it's gotten worse. Exactly. So that makes it a lot easier to stomach a deal right there. The tougher deal for me, actually, would be giving up Tyrese Maxey. And I think that's a big reason as to why the Sixers are not interested in De'Aaron Fox. I feel like they already have De'Aaron Fox with even more of an upside in Tyrese Maxey right now. So I think that's why they're staying away from that name, and I don't disagree with that at all. I think that's the right thing. Right. But I know everyone has grown attached to Matisse Thybulle. You can still love Matisse Thybulle. You can still respect Matisse Thybulle. But is your ultimate goal to love the Sixers and watch them win a championship, or is it to like keep Matisse Thybulle in a drawer somewhere and like look at him and how cute and adorable he is and then put him back? Like, no, the goal is to win a championship. And if that means you got to move on from Matisse Thybulle, I'm happy to move on from Matisse Thybulle.
Do you think the Tobias trade rumors are kind of tainting his play even more than it kind of was at one point?
No, I really don't. He has been traded so many times in his career. He's been with so many different teams. Like, I remember talking to him right after he got traded to the Sixers. And the number one thing that he wanted from any team was loyalty. And the Sixers rewarded him with a huge contract. I don't think with the way he's playing right now and his name being mentioned, he's been there before. He's done that. That's just the way his career has gone, unfortunately, to a degree. But I think the thing that's affecting him is I don't think he's healthy. And I don't think physically he's healthy with the shoulder injury. I don't think physically he's healthy with getting over COVID. He said a month ago that he was still feeling like he had a cold every single day. My recommendation, and don't take this as me wanting to bench Tobias Harris, because that's not what I'm saying, although I know people want to do that. Send him off. See you later. Just, dude, take a month. Take 3 weeks, whatever you need. Don't leave the house. Sit in the whirlpool. Get better. Get 100%, and then come back. And hopefully, refreshed, rested, healthy, hopefully he's the guy that will play as well as he played last season, because people forget – he got as close to an all-star game as he ever did last year, was right there. I mean, you had Doc Rivers calling around the league trying to get him in. He can get back to that level. I'm sure of it. I know he can. I don't think he's 100% healthy. I'm still rooting for this guy. Talk about mindset with a guy like Jalen Hurts. I think Tobias Harris is a very similar mindset, which is why I wouldn't boo him. If you boo him, fine. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying I wouldn't. I think he is a much better basketball player than we have seen this year. He has shown that throughout his career. I don't think he's anything close to 100% healthy. If I'm the Sixers, I send him off until he is healthy again to come back. Because if they get that version of Tobias Harris again, then you're looking at not just a guy to come in to help out Joel Embiid, then you're also bringing in a guy to help out Tobias Harris. Then you could have something even closer to a big three right now with that type of offense. And I think that's something that Daryl Morey is still very much interested in, because he brought that out. He brought up Tobias Harris's name unprovoked, saying, we need someone to come in here and play with Joel and Tobias. And I'm like, speaking of Tobias, what the hell's his problem? But that's one thing that didn't really get a lot of light shown on it in that interview. But that's one thing I'm still curious about. And I thought it was interesting that Daryl Morey brought that name up, even though he wasn't even asked about it.
Do you think him saying he doesn't think a deal is going to happen is a thing he has to say, or do you think he's actually pessimistic towards it?
I think he was being very real in the interview. I got the sense that he was being very real. Anybody that tells you, the reports come out about 25 players, top 25 players, and then all of a sudden it's 40. I don't think that person wanted to BS you. I think he would have stayed away from expanding the pool to 40 players. But when he said the thing about Tobias Harris, when he said the things about Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, I think he was being very real in that interview with Mike. And I think one of the things that was really interesting was when he was talking about making moves, he was talking about how much closer he can get this team to a championship level. And I think he has settled on the idea that he might have to make a more mediocre deal than he was expecting when all of this started. And I think the fact that he's backed off the original stance of, hold on, this could take 4 years, to, we'll take a top 40. Like, that to me is something that I think is finally settling in with Daryl Morey. So I don't think he's just doing the GM speak. I don't think he's doing the president of basketball operations speak when he talks about the Ben Simmons deal. I think he's being very real when it comes to what they could get back in return.
So real quick, how active do you think they will be at the deadline? If not a Ben move, because he said they'll be active. Yeah. And, he'll try to make this team better.
Yeah, I think you're going to see something along the lines of what they did last year. And I'm blanking on his name, George Hill.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. Who they brought in the trade deadline last year. And he even admitted that deal didn't work. It's going to be something minor. It's not going to be something worth bragging about, unfortunately. But it'll be something that makes them a little bit better. Who that person is right now, I don't know. There's too many opportunities, too many options out there right now. But there's a chance a good chance that they still make a move, albeit without Ben being involved.
All right, man. Last question for you. I'd love to sit here and be like, well, what do you think about Joel's recent play? Well, we know he's a freaking monster and he's the best center in the game. So
yes, no longer a unicorn, by the way. We're not using the word unicorn anymore. Pegasus. He's a Pegasus.
Okay.
He's even more rare. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right. No, I'll keep saying that on the show now.
Yeah. Right.
But let's have some fun with the last question.
Sure.
It seems like every night his numbers are being flashed on the screen next to Sixer greats in Wilt in AI. Where does he rank to you for all-time favorite Sixer and maybe even Philly athlete?
Wow. All-time favorite. Well, I mean, Iverson's era was my era. Like that's when I was growing up, man. That's like when you had posters on your wall. You know what I'm saying? I love Allen Iverson.
Did you have the cornrows too?
Yeah, that's what made me go bald. My hair was like, nice try, idiot, and it just left me. No, that was my era. Like that 01 finals run, that was like a party at everybody's house. Everybody had a party for one game of the finals. You were at a different house every night for watching those games, man. That was awesome. We just watched Allen Iverson. And I don't know if we'll ever see that again. Like it was a one team tailored to just one player. You had 4 great defenders, and then the guy didn't stop shooting. Like, what the hell? And that was AI. But Joel Embiid, as far as talent goes overall, he is the best all-around Sixer of my lifetime. I didn't watch Wilt. I wasn't even a thought when Wilt played his last game in the NBA. But I imagine he would be the most dominant. But when you look at a guy like Joel Embiid, offense, defense, versatility offensively, it's hard to think about anybody better than him that I have ever seen in a Sixers uniform. And probably the best that I could go back to remember would even be Charles Barkley, even before Allen Iverson. The very tail end of Doc, like I forget about, right. I can't do that. But in terms of overall versatility on both ends of the court, I have never seen anyone play better in a Sixers uniform than Joel Embiid. Showmanship, overall talent, and what he brings to the floor every single night, it's really hard to top that.
He does something new every night, it feels like some of the shit last night with, and you see the videos of him and he looks at him, man. Him and Drew Hanlon, they put a lot of work in. Yeah. He's doing something I've never seen centers do before. You used to see the clips of him next to Hakeem and him and Kareem and him working on those post moves. And now it's like translated to Kobe and MJ. And it's like, dude, he's trying to do things at 7 feet at a center position that some of the greatest scorers have done within their game. And it's paying dividends for sure.
People always make the connection there when they say Joel Embiid needs to, I hate this mindset, but some people still have it. Oh, he needs to be under the basket. He's a center. And he needs to be like a 90 center. And I'm like, the hell with that. Why would I settle for that when I have a 7-foot 90 small forward? Really, it's not even a point guard. And he brought the ball up last night a couple of different times.
He takes it coast to coast.
He coast to coast, behind the back, finishes and one. He's incredible. He hits his free throws. He plays like a 90 small forward is what he does. He's like a Scottie Pippen out there is what he does with how versatile his game can be offensively, defensively, rebounding, occasional setting up the teammates. It's everything. He does everything on the court that you need someone of his caliber to do. He is that special of a player. I've never seen anyone in a Sixers uniform better than him. As far as the other sports you asked me about, I love John LeClair. That was my era for Flyers hockey. I think he's better than John LeClair. I look at the Phillies with the Utley era and all that, and Howard and Hamels. Better than that. They brought us a championship. Football-wise, I don't know. I mean, I love Jason Kelce, but damn, Joel Embiid is just overall individual performances. He's the best.
Doc's up there, but he doesn't have the kind of impact on the game.
Right. Doc is probably still the most loved athlete that never won a championship, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I remember people crying in the streets when Dawkins went to the Broncos. Yeah. But Doc's definitely up there. But something about Joel Embiid, and overall, you just accept him as one of the best in the game, if not the best. I think he's just an MVP in waiting, man.
Yeah. I hope so. All right, guys, go check him out on Twitter at Marc Farzetta. You can catch him on the Farzy Show Monday through Friday in the mornings. Marc, thank you so much for coming on, and have a great night, my man.
Matt, Dylan, appreciate you guys for having me on. You guys do a great job with this show. Continued success to you too. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot,
man.
See you guys.
All right. What a guest, Kent. That was awesome.
Yeah, very high energy. That was awesome.
All right, man. Anything in specific that you want to get into from that interview, or should we just wrap this shit show the hell up?
Just wrap it up. And he covered all the Ben stuff. He covered all the Tobias stuff. Now that the Eagles are done, we'll be getting into a lot of basketball, I'm assuming. We'll definitely get some more guests on here, too, basketball related. So it'll be exciting.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, you can check us out on Twitter at DSM_media. You can find our link tree in our bio. It will take you to every social media platform that we are on. We're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as we stream to you guys live through our own personal Twitter accounts, plus DSM Media's YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook accounts. For myself, for Gint, and for our special guest, Marc Farzetta, have a great night.